executives aren't going to buy into community just because it's a buzzword. They're going to buy into outcomes. So our job is really to connect the dots between that human connection and the business acceleration. Like, what is our executive team going to care about? So kind of trying to tie the idea of community into those goals. So how is community going to support the key metrics that the organization has, being able to articulate that in terms of adoption, support, deflection, employee satisfaction, product feedback, like whatever those things are that are important. And then translating that into measurable things, ROI, KPIs, scalability, compete. Like, what's the language that's going to matter to executives?
Welcome to another episode of Fresh Perspectives. My name is David Bowman. I am the product director for Fresh Intranet. Special episode today, which is why I am not joined by Yarbo's Horse. That isn't the reason that it's a special episode. A while back, friend of the show, Juliet Stott, who's the founder of Brightstar Content Marketing, interviewed community hero Laurie Pottmeyer, who ran the Microsoft Most Valued Professional, MVP, community. Juliet interviewed Laurie for a written piece of content, and I thought that Laurie's views, practical advice, and guidance would really benefit our listeners and customer community who are often struggling with the concepts of building communities, developing champion programs, and challenges around end user adoption more broadly. Who better to run the episode than Juliet herself? Plus, for just as a special guest appearance from Riley, who is Laurie's dog, who was understandably irritated by the tradies in her house at the time. Really hope you enjoy the discussion. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Juliet Stott, co-founder of Brightstar, a content marketing agency that works with Microsoft partners. I'm thrilled to be talking to the Queen of Community Building, Laurie Pottmeyer. Many of you will know her as the brains behind Microsoft 365 MVP program. She spent almost 2 decades at Microsoft building communities, but I'll let her tell you her story.
Oh, thanks, Juliet. I'm really happy to be here with you. Yeah, like Juliet said, my name is Laurie Pottmeyer. I spent a lot of time at Microsoft and here to talk community with you. The last community that I worked on was the Microsoft 365 MVP program. And so for those of you who are not familiar with the MVP program, it is a program that is awarded. People are awarded the MVP award for their technical depth in Microsoft products, but most importantly, their community contributions. So people who are out there blogging and talking about the products and educating people, answering questions about the product and so on. Before I managed the MVP program, I worked on feedback and user adoption programs and really kind of helping shape how customers engage with Microsoft 365. And that's kind of where I fell in love with community. I really saw how communities can impact change. So that's a little bit about me. And I live in Portland, Oregon. So I'm just on the West Coast.
Thank you so much. Well, after nearly 2 decades shaping communities, what does community actually mean to you? And how has it changed over the last 2 decades?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Community to me is really where connection turns into momentum. So what I mean by that is, it's not about people being in the same space. It's really about kind of how people feel when they're safe enough to share and challenge each other and ask questions and ultimately build together. And that could be building could be really anything. For different organizations. And then how does that momentum grow once those personal relationships are built? And I've really seen how community can spark innovation, scale support is a big one and really create real change. But for me personally, the most meaningful outcome is the connections that I've built with so many technical experts who have really become friends around the globe.
And what's the goal of building this community? Can you put a tangible ROI on it for those considering it? What are the sort of hard and soft metrics on community building?
Yeah, I mean, there's several metrics and, community is a hard thing to measure. And, people always want to know what are the metrics behind a successful community. There's a few things to look at. One is customer retention. Are your customers sticking around, and how is community impacting that? Supporting cost reduction. That could be community helping offset support costs by answering questions in forums and things like that. Product innovation. How are they helping talk about features that are needed, problems that need to be solved? Community can come and bring that to organizations, really help them understand what those things are. And that can increase innovation and really help product quality as well by testing and validating and understanding what's working and what's not working. We can measure what community is bringing to us in terms of those feature requests and those, bugs and product issues. Messaging. How are, if we're announcing something to the world, maybe we run it by community first and they help us understand how that's going to land. And so measuring those types of things, what are the messages that we were able to tweak and change prior to going to market or going and launching broadly. Content creation. What is community doing in the way of supporting our messaging by creating their own content? So are they talking about our product or our service? Are they blogging? Are they going to conferences and talking about it and being able to track what that output is? If we give information to our community, are they out there kind of helping us extend that messaging? And for internal, there can be different things that you measure for internal teams too. Like if you have a champions program, how are teams becoming more efficient by what we're sharing with each other? And that could be in the way of forums and how many questions there are, and how many answers, or what is that ratio, and then just ways that they're more efficient. So maybe it's a product that you're rolling out internally that is solving a problem, and then you're measuring how that tool is doing, and that's based on how your community is sharing with people. So there's lots of things that you can measure. Some of it's soft, some of it's hard metrics. Numbers are certainly important, but what numbers are most important? Your numbers of how many people in the community may not be the most important thing. You may be more interested in what those people who are in your community are doing. So all those things that I just mentioned, right? When you're talking about, okay, we have 50 people in this community or 50,000 in this community, really what's most important is how they're engaging. What are they bringing? What problem are they solving? It's finding those metrics that are important to you, measuring it is what you need to determine.
I suppose there's also sort of softer metrics like the feeling of belonging, whether that's internal or external. Sort of how important is that in terms of that community feel? I feel like I belong to this community.
Well, that's certainly a way that you get people to engage in your community, right? Once you have, let's say it's an internal program like a champions program. Why are people going to want to be a champion in that program? Why are they going to want to talk about or help others in their organization roll out a new technology, for instance? That's not their job, right? They may be an executive assistant, or they may be in the marketing department, or, they may not be in the IT department that's in charge of rolling this out, but why do they want to be part of that program? So what's going to, what kind of benefit are they going to get? And I think belonging is obviously a huge one. Yeah. But, there's simple things like having a badge. Yes. It's crazy like how excited, people get because they're being recognized. And that's whether it's internal or external. We can have external, definitely for external communities, there's ways to recognize. And I think it's important that people feel like when they're contributing to something, they are, a part of it, a part of that community, but also, being recognized so that they understand that their impact as well.
So how do you go about getting executive buy-in to start a community? And I suppose that goes hand in hand with how do you get the budget for it?
Yeah, community has kind of become a buzzword in the last number of years. I remember when I was working on user adoption programs, which is an internal community program, helping customers really build those champion and programs in order to increase user adoption. Executive sponsorship was one of the very first things that we talked about. And, it used to be something that we really had to sell and explain because it wasn't widely understood. But as time has gone on, it's become kind of this buzzword. And I think sometimes people get confused about what community is, and that's probably a whole nother conversation that we could talk about. But to answer questions about kind of that executive buy-in, how to get budget, there's kind of a few things that you need to look at, like executives aren't going to buy into community just because it's a buzzword. They're going to buy into outcomes.
Yes.
So our job is really to connect the dots between that human connection and the business goals or, business acceleration. Like, what is our executive team going to care about? And so kind of trying to tie the idea of community into those goals. So, how is community going to support the key metrics that the organization has, being able to articulate that in terms of adoption, support, deflection, employee satisfaction, product feedback, like whatever those things are that are important. And then, translating that into measurable things, ROI, KPIs, scalability, compete. Like, what are those things what's the language that's going to matter to executives?
And what about choosing the right person as well? Have they got to have certain characteristics, perhaps a profile? They don't mind of cascading information. They've been involved in community or community style projects before. How would you go about approaching that executive? I mean, does it have to be somebody? Where does community sit in an organization, I suppose?
Yeah, I think, recruiting an executive sponsor is a really important thing. And buy-in really starts with belief. And so there may be kind of what they call low-hanging fruit, right? We always love that term. But who are those people, who are those leaders that already value connection, innovation, employee voice? Who has those relationships already? Maybe those are that's kind of your low-hanging fruit. They can be positioned as champions, not just a gatekeeper, definitely. And they can kind of help bring in other leaders who may be able to participate in that as well. I think also their, executive assistants, I think, are definitely undervalued in terms of how they can participate in a pilot program or a champions program, because they play a very big role in bringing in the executives onto onboarding. And so that's also an area
on the pulse, haven't they, as well?
Oh,
Absolutely. So than the executive that we work with. Is that right? Yeah. So from a blank sheet of paper, how would you start building a community? What would you advise? I mean, from the very outset, okay, so you've got is the executive buy-in the first step? And then once you've got that buy-in, or do you have to go to the executive with the plan? So what comes first?
I think that really depends. I know people don't like that answer, but I think it really depends on the organization. Is this something that people are doing casually already, or different parts of the organization are doing casually already? Or maybe there's, kind of some sort of a feedback program or a program that already exists that maybe isn't a full blown community yet. I think that's different than an organization that's completely starting from scratch. And that goes for internal and external. But there's a few things, when you're looking at kind of what makes a community successful community is really where members of that community feel seen, heard, and empowered. Right. I mean, they need to know that their participation is driving real outcomes for the organization. Like, why would I want to be a part of something if it's just going to go into a black hole? If this just, and sometimes it feels good just to be around other people that share a passion, right? That's kind of a community of its own kind. But an organization is going to see value in that community when they're helping to meet their outcomes, their goals. So starting up, it's really important to understand, to have like a purposeful design. What's the mission? What's the value proposition, both for the internal team and if it's an external community for those external members? Is there a clear mission and value proposition? What's everybody's goals? What are the gives and gets that everybody wants to receive? If I'm internal and I'm building this program, what do I care about? What is important to me? What's important to my leadership? Is it product feedback? Is it getting the messaging out? Is it, sharing, being kind of an RO marketing? I mean, there are very different goals for those things. And then for, so just being really clear on what those goals are. And then for, the people that are participating in the community, if they're going to participate, what are they getting out of it?
Yeah.
Is this just a social thing to be around other people that have kind of a shared passion? Or are we asking them to do something? And if we are, what are they getting out of that? So for instance, for me, with the programs that I ran, I was going to our MVPs quite a bit because they're experts in the technology. They have a wide following in many cases. And they understand what real customers are having challenges with. So for me, I was going to them oftentimes asking for feedback, asking them to help share our messaging. But what are they getting out of that? And so it was really important for me to understand what was important to them.
Yeah.
What do they want to get out of it? And so when you're building a community, understanding what your goals are, but also understanding what your target market for that community, what do they want? And understanding what they need to get out of it, and kind of then finding a balance that will help you understand, okay, here's where we start. And here's maybe kind of a cool run.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry. I was just going to ask you about the digital tools potentially that are available to people. Does it start with the Viva Engage or your intranet, or does it start small in a Teams? Or how do people use the technology that they've got to sort of create that sort of foundation, a place where people can go? And I presume, these days, most companies are working in a hybrid way. So how do you then also cater for those on-site and those off-site? So there's sort of like a two-part question to that, really.
We're really living in a digital world, right? Like I remember when everybody was going to the office, right? You probably do too, Juliet. We all went into the office every single day. We checked our voicemail and checked our email, and then we got started with work. And now we are, oftentimes working around the clock. We're working, here we are in completely different time zones as well. After hours for you almost. And I'm just getting started in my day. So we are working very, very different than, we did even just 10 years ago. But I think, AI obviously is a huge help to us, but and we can talk about kind of that in a minute. But I think tool-wise, there's different things you can do depending on if it's an internal community or if it's an external community. So like with an internal community, if you're building, say, like a champions program where you're wanting to adopt a new technology within the organization, and a good example of this would be Copilot. Right? Something that is new to people that, maybe they've played with in their personal lives or kind of, trying to use just kind of for fun. But now organizations are really pushing this, like you need to automate, you need to be more efficient. And so this is a new thing for people. And so being able to use the tools that you have internally, maybe that's, like Viva Engage, or, you have Teams, obviously, where you have collaboration through channels and meetings that you can track. You have intranets or, like a SharePoint where you can post content and have resource hubs and, feedback portals that you can manage, or where you track your questions. And so there's different tools that you can use internally, obviously, that are, already available to you. I think if you have the ability to have meetings in person, or even if it's just semi-regular gathering for people to participate in person, we cannot get away from that. We need to have some sort of personal connection. And if it is people from scattered all around the world, then a Teams meeting is next best, right? Where we're seeing faces and engaging that way. Yeah. But then external communities is a different story, right? You may be using a lot of those tools to communicate. Obviously, for meetings, you're going to use Microsoft Teams and have the ability to communicate with people, real time in that way, or in person. But also you have LinkedIn groups, you have different online forums. For Microsoft products, you have the Microsoft Tech Community, which is a tool that I helped get off the ground. And there's thousands of people in the Microsoft Tech Community, and it's a great way to engage with people. So say you're a partner, a Microsoft partner, and, you focus on SharePoint. There's a whole community of SharePoint users, IT pros, developers in the Microsoft Tech Community. So that's like a great place for you to go and engage with people, answer questions, share your knowledge, get your name out there. There's nothing about those types of platforms, whether it's the Microsoft Tech Community or another online virtual platform like, Discord or something like that, even Facebook groups, where you can go in and answer questions and be part of the community. And by the way, I work for this partner. I manage these programs, and that's an additional marketing tool for you too. So you're sharing your knowledge and being part of the community, but it doesn't hurt to put your name out there and let people know, gosh, this guy really knows what he's talking about, or this gal really has a lot of experience doing this. I wonder if they could help us. So, use those tools. But there's other custom portals and forums that you can create if you're trying to create your own thing. But look for what's already out there in ways that you can engage with people through community.
I wanted to go back to where community belongs in an organization. Is that responsible? Is HR responsible? Is that comms? Or is it where did you sit in the organization? And then I suppose it starts with one person, or your task with creating what's the ideal team look like, and what kind of roles are, or who's responsible for what. You talked about multiple channels there. We say best practice is to try and keep your channels to a minimum so that you excel in one rather than spread yourself thin in 5, for example. What's your take on that?
If you are building a community, the community team or person, in many cases, hopefully it's a team, but, sometimes it's an individual. That person is sitting in whatever team related to the goals of what that community is doing. So if that community is trying to get more influencers talking about their product, maybe that's somebody who sits in marketing. If that's a community that is built around people who are driving internal communications at their organization, and we want to talk to all those people at a bunch of different organizations around the world who are doing that role, then maybe that is somebody who is starting a program within that part of the organization that is selling or developing tools related to that, right? So for instance, I sat in the engineering side of things when I was at Microsoft. That wasn't the case for every team related to the MVP program, but we always try to have somebody from on the M365 side of things. We always try to have somebody from each product that was from engineering and somebody from marketing. because those two people together, we needed to come together to run an efficient and impactful community. The community members that we worked with as part of the MVP program, they needed very deep technical knowledge of our products. And from the engineering side, we really cared a lot about what their feedback was. And, bring a wealth of knowledge. Hundreds and thousands of MVPs around the world were able to come to us under NDA and share what their customers needed, why things weren't working, why things were working, and brought the problems to us to solve. And we were able to talk with them under NDA about those things. That wouldn't be a function of marketing. That wouldn't be a function of HR. That's what engineering cared about. That said, we worked very closely with our marketing partners because marketing really cared about what the messaging was. When we had events like Ignites coming up, it's very important for those messages that are going to be announced to the world to be run by people under NDA who are very passionate and knowledgeable about what it is we're doing. And so being able to say, hey, we're going to start talking about this thing on this date. Here's how we're going to announce it. We have the opportunity to hear that, oh my gosh, no, you can't say that because of this, this, and this. Or, wow, people are going to be really concerned about this part of your message. And that gives us a chance to be like, oh, okay, yeah, good point. We should tweak that, or we should message it in another way. Or in some cases, like we had an example where we completely changed our licensing structure on a product prior to an announcement because of that feedback. So it really depends on where that person sits, and it can mean different things. But I think looking at your goals as a community and where it makes sense for your organization. And it may be multiple people from multiple teams that come together to build a community team.
So how long does it take to get a community off the ground, or sort of process?
Yeah. A community can be two people. You and we could be a community today, right?
Yeah.
So time, it doesn't really matter. You could have a community and not even know it. Like, let's look at where people are that already exist. There's probably a platform somewhere where people are having conversations about the very things that that you as a community builder wants to, engage with. So looking at where are those people, and can you plug into an existing community? Not like you're going to, steal people away from that, but plug yourself into something that already exists and invite them to the additional opportunities to engage that you have. So it could take, no time at all. And you could start plugging into existing communities. Or if you want to start a more formal program, that may take a little bit longer. But again, you're going to plug into those existing communities to invite people to be a part of what it is you're doing.
Don't try and do it on your own. And then I suppose once you've got this community, how do you keep them engaged? What are the how often do you have to engage with them? How often do you have to communicate with them, reward them, give them badges, send them a plaque, or what is it? Tell me about that engagement piece. You've got the community. How do you keep it going?
I think the most important thing is consistency. Like, if you walked into a room that was empty, you would walk right back out. You wouldn't stay there and hang out by yourself. It's the same thing maybe you would. Sometimes that's really, peaceful. But that said, when you're talking about community, you want to go where other people are. And in order to have people there, you have to be consistent. And so whether that's once a quarter, once a month, once a week, every day, depending on what it is you're doing, you have to be consistent. You have to show up. And so you could start by doing a monthly call that's virtual and just bringing people together and getting to know people. When I started the Women in Microsoft Teams community, we just did a monthly call where It was super laid back. We brought somebody from Microsoft, a woman that was in an engineering team at Microsoft, and then we brought a community member, and the two of them would both talk for 15 minutes, and then we would just have time for questions and answers. And that gave us a way to really engage with one another on a consistent basis. And if you couldn't make it, we had a recording and we had an online team that everybody was a part of, and you could converse and share information and ask questions there. But it was just a call, right? It was just a call and like a really easy platform on, going into a team.
The key to that, then having telling your audience, it's always going to be on this time. It's a bit like, broadcasting. You knew that at 8:00 this show is going to be on. It's having that regularity. It's there. Regardless of whatever, it always goes on. Is that important?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And you're never going to, when you have a global audience or global participation, you're never going to get everybody. So maybe you have, let's say you're a partner organization, you're working with people all over the world, and, you're looking to reach a wide audience. Then you may consider doing like an AM and a PM to do different time zones. I think, one of the learnings that I had was, I was trying to reach a global audience. So I was dealing with time zones. But then when you're working with a global audience, you also have things that you need to consider, like language. Not every country in the world speaks English as their first language, right? So, that's very important to consider. But also, there's a lot of cultural things as well. Like in some cultures, there are people that, sometimes females will not speak up, or sometimes there's a ranking, in your title, and you don't speak up if somebody with a more important or bigger title is on the call with you, right? There are just cultural things to consider. And so kind of offering, looking at who your audience is and what your priorities are. What are the ways that you can engage those different people who may, need a different environment or, something. And one of the things that I did, for instance, in Asia Pacific, we were seeing that we had so many MVPs from this region, but we're really not engaging with them, even when we think we're doing something in their time zone.
Yes.
What we didn't realize, and after engaging with internal people who were in those regions, I came to understand that sometimes in certain countries, it's important to do things during business hours and not after business hours, which a lot of times the community, you're trying to reach people after they are done with their day job. But in some regions, so really understanding those types of things. And then the other thing is language. Even if somebody spoke English, a lot of times they don't feel confident enough maybe to converse, which, me being an English speaker and not speaking any other language fluently, I'm just happy that people are engaging. I'm very impressed. However, by having a native speaker, we saw, I can't even tell you the numbers. They were exponentially bigger. And if we just kind of sat in the background and used translator and had them having those conversations with native speakers. So just considering, those types of things.
That leads me on to sort of, what does success look like? How do you measure success? Is it numbers? Is it engagement? I mean, you've often said, we could be a community of two. But in order to take it back to the executive team to say, this is what we've done and this is a success in our eyes, what is success?
So before I go into that, I really want to talk about what makes a community successful. So what are the things that I'll talk a little bit about how to measure those things. But one, having a purposeful design. I talked at the beginning about having a mission and a value proposition, that is first and foremost, right? Be really clear on what you want to do. Because before you measure anything, you need to understand what's important. And it may be you personally, but, for your job's sake, it's the organization, right? And that's a balancing act, because a lot of people who manage communities are really people driven, right? And I'm one of those people. And so remembering that, the value for the organization is also really important. Consistent engagement. We mentioned that having a regular interaction, whether that's live in person, virtual, but having regular content, having regular events and times to meet, but also being responsive, even if you have like a virtual forum or something. What is your response rate? That's something that you can measure.
Okay, yeah.
Peer-to-peer value, like understanding how members are helping themselves, helping each other, not just the person managing the community, right? Because one person, once your community grows, one person can't do it all. So you have to bring others from your team, but mostly community is helping each other. We're all answering questions for the broad, the larger collective. Leadership opportunities, like how are you going to bring people along with you and then help you lead? And that could be people internal or people external. Having feedback loops. And that could be related to the product that you're building or selling or, getting community insights. But it also is feedback on the program itself. And then when you're measuring feedback on the program itself, that's your internal people. Like, what are we getting out of this community that we've built? Are we meeting our goals? But also the people participating. Are they getting what they need or what they want from the community as well? And then having an inclusive culture. So safe, welcoming, respecting and representing different voices, diverse voices. Like that's really important as well. So those are all things that you can measure. So it's not like you're launching a product and you have X number of features that you've launched. And now you can go to your leadership and say, I released this feature or this program or this, offering, whatever it is. And here's how people have engaged with it or purchased it or used it. We don't have that luxury of having those types. So when you're measuring community, the things that you can measure are engagement. And I think that's very first and foremost, most important, because again, it doesn't matter how many people are in your community. If nobody is engaging and helping you get the information or whatever it is you're looking for, then it doesn't really matter. So if I have 100 people in my community or 1,000, are 10% of them attending things and engaging and providing feedback and, showing up, or is it 80%? And you need to decide.
Thinking about that. Community and the engineers, did they value that feedback? I mean, is there an ego thing there? We're the builders, we're the tech people, we know what we're doing. We don't need the community feedback. Was there some pushback from sort of the very technical people? Was there some skepticism around using community as a sort of a feedback loop, I suppose? And that is a success measure if you persuade those people to listen.
Well, that's kind of a two-part thing. So one, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are people that are just nervous, right? They're like, oh gosh, if I ask for feedback, I'm afraid of what I'm going to hear.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that, I really kind of try to make people comfortable with that is by showing examples of other people and the success that they have had. So there's probably 5 people, I can count on one hand, who were my champions. They were the people who were on the technical, they were the engineers who had great success stories and involved our community on a regular basis. And so taking their stories, this is how they did it, and this is what they did, and here's what they got out of it. That can be really powerful. So yes, there are those people, but, showing them, and also just having them attend other people doing community work. Why don't you just come to this other call or, be a part of this other thing where somebody else is doing this and just see, get to know the community. I think a lot of times the problem is they don't know who the community people are. So it's really it's like a lot of anxiety, not only do I not know what they're going to say, but like, who are these people? Do they like me? Do they not like me? Do they like my product? Do they like what I'm building? Right. So
I also think for the community, how much do you have to tell them the feedback you gave us helped shape this product in this way? So thank you very much. Or actually, feedback we had to ignore because it was totally impractical and it wasn't profitable to do this. Or I suppose that also is managing it, that side, isn't it? So how do you manage the expectations of your community who think they are also experts?
And we also love the feedback loop, right? It's really important to ask for feedback, but if you're not doing anything with it, then why even ask for it? So that's the first thing. If you have a survey and it's 100 questions long, it's probably really way too long, right? Even if you have 10 questions, it may be too long. When you're asking for feedback, whether that's in a survey or verbally, you need to ask yourself, what am I doing with this information? If it's meaningful information to you, then ask the question, but tell the people that you're asking for feedback from why you're asking the question. What is the relevance? I need to make a decision. I have A, B, or C, and I need your help deciding A, B, or C. Tell me why, right? Give them that context. And then once you ask for the feedback, first of all, be open to it and listen. You're asking. So take the time to listen and be open to it, but then also loop back, right? Let them know what you did with it. And it may not be what they want to hear, but then providing the context, and especially like this may not be something that you share in, a huge public forum, but with your kind of tight-knit community of people, especially if they're under NDA, like, hey, we listened to your feedback. Here's what you told us. This is what we did with it. We weighed the pros and cons. We went this other direction, and this is why. And people love that transparency. They respect that.
So what advice would you give to anybody starting out a community today, with all the sort of encroaching of AI technology and AI is going to do everything for us? In that context, what advice would you give? Obviously, we want to embrace the tools, acknowledge their part, but also remember the human part of connections.
Yeah. I mean, there's kind of three things when you think about like, where do I start? And it can be really overwhelming. And like I said, we can start small, and Juliet, you and I can be our own community. But ultimately, you need to start with three things, and that's purpose, participation, and sustainability. First, why does this community exist? Why are we doing this? What is it for? And then see the engagement and leadership, understanding kind of who your committed voices are, who are your founding members, who are your champions, who are those leaders that are going to help you kind of build a frame and get people involved. And that's kind of where our champions program can come in. And then finally, set success metrics in your feedback loops, like measure what matters, like I said, and then involve that based on your input. And then, to answer your question about kind of AI, like AI can generate answers, right? It can automate tasks, it can scale systems. Like AI can be a fabulous tool, and it should be a fabulous tool for us to really do things faster and do more. However, it cannot replicate trust. It cannot replicate empathy or shared purpose. Like that's where community comes in. It's really the human layer. It's the people that makes AI meaningful. AI is a great foundation. It helps us do a lot of the busy work on the back end. It gives us a starting point. It can help us think of things to talk about. It can take our feedback and it can compile it. Like it can do great things. But it's really like how we ensure that these tools are serving our needs and reflecting different voices and kind of evolving responsibly. But it's ultimately about the people. And I think if you start with having that in mind, that this is, we're going to use these tools, but really it's up to us as individuals, as people to engage, you can be a lot more successful.
Right. Well, I think we are almost done. It just leaves me to ask if people want your advice or want to engage with you outside of this, how do they connect with you?
I love to talk about this stuff, and especially now, it's really meaningful to have these conversations to me. And I love helping people who are just getting going in this area. It can be really intimidating, but it doesn't have to be. And you can start small. So I'm happy to have these conversations. If you have questions or want to reach out, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just at Laurie Pottmeyer. And I'd love to get in touch with people.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's really lovely to chat to you and see you as always. Thank you very much. And
Thanks, Juliet. Nice to talk with you.
Nice to talk with you.
Bye-bye.